The galaxy had learned to fear the Zarketh Empire. For more than 3,000 cycles, their fleets moved from star to star, taking worlds, breaking races, and leaving silence behind. They ruled through fear, not law. Mercy did not exist in their language. To the Zarketh, mercy was weakness, and weakness deserved extinction. When humanity first met the Empire, the war was short and brutal. Human ships were strong, but the Empire was endless. After the final battle, near the broken moon of Talos, the remaining human fleet was destroyed. Survivors were captured, chained, and taken to the imperial capital. The Zarketh Emperor wanted to see the humans himself. He had heard strange reports about them, rumors that did not make sense. Stories of humans protecting enemies, of soldiers who shared water with prisoners. Lies he believed. Soon he would see the truth. In the great black hall of judgment, humans were forced to kneel. Their hands were bound with energy cuffs. Alien nobles watched from high platforms, their cold eyes full of hunger. At the center stood the Emperor, tall and armored, his voice heavy like thunder. He looked down at the humans, especially at one man in front. This was Captain Elias Kane, the leader of the captured fleet. The Emperor expected fear. He expected begging. Instead, he saw calm. The Emperor spoke, saying humans were weak, their war pointless, their species finished. He offered them a choice only for entertainment. They could beg, and die slowly, or stay silent, and die quickly. The hall was quiet. Then something unexpected happened. A wounded Zarketh soldier collapsed near the humans. He had been injured earlier, bleeding dark blood onto the cold floor. Guards moved to execute him for his weakness. Before anyone could react, Captain Kane moved forward. Despite his chains, he knelt beside the fallen enemy. He spoke calmly, asking for permission to help. Laughter echoed across the hall. The Emperor allowed it, curious. Humans removed a piece of their own clothing, pressing it against the alien wound. Another human whispered instructions. They worked together, focused, gentle. The alien soldier stopped bleeding. He lived. The hall fell silent. No one had ever saved a Zarketh soldier, especially not an enemy. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. He asked why the human had done it. Captain Kane answered in a steady voice that life had value, even the life of an enemy. He said war ended someday, but action stayed forever. The Emperor felt something strange, something he had not felt in centuries. Confusion. He ordered the humans taken away, not to execution chambers, but to holding cells. He wanted to understand them. Across the Empire, whispers began. Soldiers talked about the humans, who saved one of their own. Scientists argued that humans were dangerous, not because of weapons, but because of ideas. The Emperor watched recordings again and again. The calm faces, the gentle hands. It made no sense. Days later, he ordered the humans brought back for observation. Tests were done. Humans were placed with sick prisoners, both human and alien. They shared food. They spoke softly. They comforted the dying. Even when beaten, they did not hate. Guards began to hesitate. Some lowered their weapons. One night, a young alien guard secretly gave water to a human child. He did not know why. He only knew it felt right. Reports of disobedience increased. The Emperor became angry, then afraid. He had ruled through fear, but fear was breaking. The humans were not fighting back, yet the Empire felt weaker. In the Great Hall, the Emperor confronted Captain Kane again. He asked a single question. Why did humans not seek revenge? The human answered simply. He said revenge ended nothing. Mercy changed things. The Emperor struck him down in rage, yet ordered his life spared. As the humans were dragged away, something changed in the galaxy. The Zarketh Empire, built on cruelty, had felt mercy for the first time, and it shook them to their core. In the darkness of space, other races watched and listened. The galaxy had begun to understand one truth. Humans were different, and that difference would soon destroy an empire. The humans were moved to a silent research station orbiting a dead world. The Zarketh Empire called it an observation facility, but everyone knew it was a prison. Cold metal walls surrounded the humans, and armed guards watched every movement. The Emperor had ordered that no human was to be killed without his command. He wanted answers. He wanted to understand how mercy could shake an empire built on fear. Scientists arrived, their eyes sharp and suspicious. They did not test human strength or weapons. They tested behavior. Humans were denied comfort. Food was limited. Sleep was interrupted. Still, the humans shared what little they had. When one human collapsed from exhaustion, another helped him stand. When an alien prisoner screamed in pain nearby, humans asked if they could help. The scientists recorded everything in silence. The results disturbed them. Humans did not break. They adapted. They cared. In another chamber, wounded Zarketh soldiers were placed near the humans as part of a cruel experiment. The scientists expected hatred or revenge. Instead, humans cleaned wounds, spoke calmly, and showed patience. One alien soldier, his armor removed, trembled as a human touched his injured limb. He expected pain. He felt relief. He did not understand it. He later told his guard that the human's hands did not feel like an enemy's. The guard did not report this. He pretended he heard nothing. Across the station, guards began to change. They watched humans refuse to strike back even when beaten. They saw humans thank guards for small kindnesses. Fear had always kept order in the Empire, but now confusion spread like a silent disease. One guard asked himself why prisoners treated him better than his own commanders ever had. The Emperor received daily reports. He read them all. The words angered him. Disobedience, hesitation, sympathy. These were dangerous signs. His advisors warned him. They said humans were using weakness as a weapon. They said mercy was a lie meant to control minds. The Emperor wanted to believe them, yet doubt grew. He remembered the fallen soldier in the hall. He remembered how easily he had been saved. During a private moment, the Emperor ordered the recordings played again. He watched Captain Kane speak calmly while surrounded by enemies. No fear, no hate, only certainty. Meanwhile, a small incident changed everything. In the lowest section of the station, a human child became ill. Fever burned through his body. Medical units refused to help. A young alien guard stood outside the cell, listening to the child's weak breathing. He had lost a son during the last conquest. He remembered the sound. After a long moment, he unlocked the door. He brought water and called for medical help, breaking direct orders. The child survived. The guard was later arrested. When questioned, he could not explain himself. He only said the human looked at him like a person, not a monster. The scientists labeled this event as contamination. They demanded immediate execution of the humans. The Emperor refused. He ordered further observation. This decision shocked the High Council. Never before had mercy delayed punishment in the Empire. Rumors spread to other stations. Some soldiers began secretly helping prisoners. Others requested transfers to avoid human contact. Fear no longer united them. It divided them. Captain Kane noticed the change. He spoke quietly to his people, telling them to stay calm, to remain human no matter what happened. He knew they were being watched. He knew every action mattered. One night, alarms echoed through the station. A fight broke out between guards. One accused another of weakness for sparing a human. The conflict ended with blood on the floor. The Emperor was informed. He stood alone in his chamber, staring into space. His empire was cracking, not from rebellion, but from doubt. He finally understood the danger. Humans did not need fleets or weapons. They changed hearts, and hearts controlled empires. The Emperor issued a new order. The humans would be brought before him again, not as prisoners, but as a test. The galaxy held its breath. The mercy that saved one soldier was now threatening millions, and the Zarketh Empire had no defense against it. The humans were taken from the observation station under heavy guard. Word of their return to the imperial capital spread quickly through Zarketh ranks. Soldiers whispered in corridors. Officers argued behind closed doors. No one said it aloud, but many felt the same fear. The humans were changing things. When Captain Elias Kane and his people entered the Great Hall again, it felt different. The same dark walls stood tall. The same banners hung from above, but the mood had shifted. The alien nobles watched with unease instead of pride. The Emperor sat on his throne silent, his armored hands resting tightly on the armrests. He ordered the humans to stand. This alone shocked the court. Prisoners never stood before the Emperor. The emperor spoke slowly, saying the empire was built on strength and obedience, not emotion. He accused humans of spreading weakness among his soldiers. Captain Kane listened without anger. When allowed to speak, he said humans were not teaching weakness. They were showing choice. A soldier could choose cruelty or kindness. That choice mattered. Murmurs spread across the hall. An imperial general stepped forward in rage. He demanded proof of human danger. To demonstrate loyalty, he ordered a captured human to be executed immediately. The chosen prisoner was young and unarmed. Guards raised their weapons. Before the order could be completed, something unexpected happened. A Zarketh officer stepped between the guards and the human. His voice shook as he refused the command. He said he would not kill someone who had saved his life on the station. Silence crushed the hall. The general drew his weapon and executed the officer without hesitation. The body fell at the human's feet. Gasps echoed. The humans did not scream. They did not attack. Captain Kane knelt beside the fallen alien, placing a hand on his chest in respect. He spoke a single sentence. He said the officer had been brave. That moment cut deeper than any blade. Soldiers across the hall felt shame burn inside them. The emperor watched everything. The execution did not restore order. It destroyed it. Fear no longer worked. The emperor realized it too late. The humans had created the first crack in the empire. The general demanded punishment. He demanded the humans be wiped out. The emperor raised his hand, stopping him. He ordered the humans return to their cells alive. This command sent shockwaves through the court. The generals stared in disbelief. Outside the palace, unrest began. Soldiers argued openly. Some refused orders. Others remembered small acts of kindness from humans. On distant ships and stations, similar thoughts spread. The empire had been strong because it believed in one truth. Power came from fear. Now that truth was broken. Captain Kane understood what had begun. He knew mercy had a cost, but also power. As the humans were led away, he looked back at the throne one last time. The emperor met his gaze. For a brief moment, they understood each other. One ruled through fear, the other through compassion. Only one could survive. After the events in the Great Hall, the Zarketh Empire entered a state of quiet tension. Orders were still given, but they were followed slowly. Punishment still happened, but they no longer inspired fear. The execution of the officer who had refused to kill a human did not restore control. Instead, it planted a deep seed of doubt. Soldiers could not forget how a human had honored a fallen enemy, while the empire had discarded him like nothing. The humans were returned to a high-security holding sector, yet their treatment quietly changed. Beatings became less frequent. Guards avoided eye contact. Some even offered extra food when no one was watching. Captain Elias Kane noticed every detail. He told his people to remain calm and respectful. He knew the empire was watching closely, waiting for humans to fail. The emperor gathered his high council in secret. His advisors spoke with anger and fear. They said mercy was spreading like a disease. They warned that humans were using emotion as a weapon. One advisor called it psychological warfare. Another demanded a full extermination order. The emperor listened, but he did not speak. He remembered the officer's final act. He remembered the silence after the shot. The empire had never felt silence before. It had always been filled with screams. Days later, the emperor ordered a new experiment. Humans and Zarketh soldiers would be placed together during a training operation on a rebel world. The goal was simple: force humans into a situation where violence was required. The emperor wanted proof that mercy would fail. If humans chose violence, the empire would claim victory. If they refused, they would be declared useless and erased. The transport ship landed on a burning planet. Smoke filled the sky. Rebel forces attacked from ruined cities. Zarketh soldiers prepared to advance, weapons ready. Humans were ordered to move with them, unarmed. When the fighting began, chaos followed. A Zarketh squad was trapped under heavy fire. Explosions shook the ground. Instead of retreating, humans ran forward. They dragged wounded soldiers to safety. They shielded them with their own bodies. One human was struck and fell, yet still pushed an alien to cover. The soldiers stared in shock. No order had forced this. No threat demanded it. It was a choice. When the battle ended, The rebels were gone. The Zarketh had won, but not because of strength alone. They had survived because humans had refused to let them die. The soldiers returned to their ship in silence. No one celebrated. The Emperor watched the mission recordings alone. He saw humans act without hesitation. He saw fear in his own soldiers' eyes, followed by something else. Respect, gratitude, loyalty, not to the Empire, but to the humans who saved them. The experiment had failed. Mercy had not weakened them. It had made them stronger. The Emperor felt anger rise, but beneath it was fear. His empire was changing. He issued a public statement. Humans were declared a threat to imperial stability. Contact was restricted. Any soldier showing sympathy would be punished. The announcement spread across the fleets. Instead of obedience, it created resistance. Soldiers whispered that the Emperor feared humans because he could not control them. Captain Kane heard of the new order. He gathered his people and spoke quietly. He said they must continue to be who they were, even if it cost their lives. He said mercy was not a strategy. It was their identity. Across the Empire, the idea spread faster than any command. Humans were not fighting the Zarketh Empire. They were changing it, and that change was becoming impossible to stop. The Emperor's declaration was meant to restore control, but it did the opposite. By naming humans a threat, he confirmed what many soldiers already felt. The Empire was afraid, not of weapons or fleets, but of an idea it could not crush. Across Zarketh space, orders became harsher. Punishments were quicker. Loyalty checks increased. Yet fear no longer worked as it once had. Soldiers followed commands with empty eyes. Some delayed actions. Others pretended not to see small acts of kindness happening around them. The humans remained confined, but their presence was felt everywhere. Stories traveled faster than ships. A human shielding an alien child. A human refusing revenge after torture. Each story weakened the Empire's grip. Captain Elias Kane understood that something larger was unfolding. He did not plan rebellion. He did not call for war. He only reminded his people to stay human. That was enough. On a distant supply station, an alien medic secretly treated human prisoners despite strict orders. On another ship, a guard unlocked a cell for a few minutes so a human could see the stars. These were small actions, but together they formed a quiet resistance. The Emperor's advisors grew desperate. They demanded mass executions to make an example. The Emperor approved limited punishments, but even these failed. Executions created martyrs. Soldiers turned away in shame. Some removed their insignia. Others deserted and vanished into deep space. The Empire had been built on obedience, and obedience was dying. Inside the imperial palace, fear replaced confidence. The Emperor began to isolate himself. He trusted fewer commanders. He watched more recordings of humans, searching for a flaw. He found none. Only consistency. Mercy in victory. Mercy in defeat. It made him uneasy. He remembered his own rise to power. The worlds burned. The cries ignored. For the first time, those memories hurt. Meanwhile, the humans were moved again, this time to a lower security station. Officially, it was for relocation. In truth, the guards no longer wanted them near the capital. The presence of humans made discipline harder. During the transfer, something unplanned happened. The transport ship suffered a systems failure. Life support failed in one section carrying Zarketh crew. Without orders, humans rushed to help. They shared oxygen masks. They guided panicking crew to safety. When power returned, no one could deny the truth. Humans had saved the ship. The captain of the vessel, a hardened Zarketh officer, stood before Captain Kane. He did not kneel. He did not threaten. He thanked him. Word of this spread quickly. The Emperor was furious when he heard. He ordered the officer executed for insubordination. The execution was scheduled publicly. On the day of the sentence, something changed forever. Soldiers refused to form the firing line. One by one, they lowered their weapons. They said they would not kill someone saved by humans. The execution was canceled. The Emperor's authority shattered in that moment. Fear had lost its power. That night, riots erupted on 3 core worlds. Citizens demanded an end to cruelty. Alien races long suppressed began to rise. The Empire tried to respond, but its soldiers hesitated. Captain Kane watched the stars from his cell, sensing the shift. He knew the empire was falling, not from attack, but from within. The emperor stood alone in his chamber, listening to reports of disorder and refusal. His empire, once unstoppable, was now fragile. He finally understood the truth. Mercy was never weakness. It was a force stronger than fear, and the Zarketh Empire was beginning to collapse under its weight. The riots spread faster than the empire could contain them. What began as small acts of refusal turned into open defiance. Entire units ignored commands. Patrol ships shut down their weapon systems. On some worlds, statues of former emperors were torn down, not in anger, but in silence. The Zarketh people had lived under fear for generations, and now fear no longer guided them. At the center of it all, the emperor remained in his private chamber, watching his empire unravel through live reports. Each screen showed the same truth. His power was fading. Advisors entered one by one, offering plans rooted in violence. Mass bombardments, planetary lockdowns, complete extermination of humans. The emperor dismissed them all, not because he had become merciful, but because he felt something unfamiliar. Doubt. For the first time, he questioned the foundation of his rule. He remembered his early days as a commander, before he became emperor. He had once spared a defeated enemy, long ago, before fear shaped him. That memory returned like a wound reopening. He ordered Captain Elias Kane brought to him privately, without chains. This command shocked the remaining loyal guards, but they obeyed. Kane entered the chamber calmly, surrounded by darkness and stars beyond the great window. The emperor studied him closely. He asked Kane if humans planned to take the empire. Kane answered simply, humans did not want an empire. They wanted peace, and the chance to choose who they were. The emperor asked why humans helped those who oppressed them. Kane said mercy was not a reward. It was a responsibility. Those words struck deep. The emperor turned away, struggling to speak. He admitted the empire was breaking. He asked if mercy could truly replace fear. Kane said fear forced obedience, but mercy earned loyalty. Loyalty lasted longer. Silence filled the chamber. The emperor dismissed Kane, ordering him returned safely. Alone again, the emperor faced his reflection. He saw not a ruler, but a prisoner of his own cruelty. Outside the palace, a new report arrived. Several fleet commanders had refused orders and declared neutrality. The empire was splitting. The emperor summoned his high generals. Their loyalty was already thin. One general spoke boldly, accusing the emperor of weakness. He demanded full control of the military to restore order. The emperor realized the truth. The greatest threat was no longer humans. It was his own commanders. As the council ended, the emperor issued a quiet order. All humans were to be protected. Any harm to them would be punished. This decree was never announced publicly, but it spread through whispers. Soldiers who heard it felt relief. For the first time, the emperor had chosen mercy over fear. But it came too late. In the shadows of the empire, ambitious generals began to move. Plans were made. Fleets repositioned. A coup was forming. The emperor stood at the edge of his chamber, staring into endless space. He knew his reign was ending, one way or another. The mercy he once mocked had changed him, and now it threatened to destroy everything he had built. The coup began without warning. In the heart of the imperial capital, loyalist communication lines went silent. Warships that once guarded the palace shifted position, their weapons turning inward. General Varric, the most powerful commander in the empire, moved quickly. He declared the emperor unfit to rule, claiming weakness and betrayal of Zarketh law. His message spread across the fleets, promising a return to strength and fear. Many officers hesitated. Some joined him. Others waited, uncertain. Inside the palace, alarms echoed through empty halls. Guards rushed to protect the emperor, but their numbers were thin. The emperor stood calmly in the throne chamber, refusing to flee. He knew running would change nothing. When Varric's forces breached the inner gates, they found something unexpected. Humans stood there. Captain Elias Kane and several others had been brought to the palace earlier under the emperor's quiet order of protection. They were unarmed. They did not block the path with force. They simply stood between the emperor and the soldiers. Varric laughed. He called the humans weak and ordered them aside. Cain did not move. He said violence would only destroy what remained of the empire. Varrock ignored him and raised his weapon. In that moment, something incredible happened. Zarketh guards lowered their rifles. One by one, they refused to fire through the humans. They would not kill those who had saved their lives before. Varrock shouted in rage and fired himself. The shot struck the emperor. He fell. The humans rushed forward, kneeling beside him. Cain pressed his hands against the wound, trying to stop the bleeding. The emperor looked up at him, shocked. He whispered why the human was helping him after everything he had done. Cain answered softly. He said mercy did not depend on worth. It depended on choice. That answer broke something inside the emperor. He ordered Varrock arrested. Half the soldiers obeyed. The other half fled. The coup collapsed in chaos. Medics arrived. The emperor survived, but his strength was gone. He was carried away, not as a god, but as a wounded ruler. Across the empire, news spread fast. Humans had protected the emperor. Humans had saved him. General Varrock vanished into deep space with his remaining forces. The empire was broken beyond repair. Fear no longer ruled. The emperor, lying in recovery, understood the truth at last. His empire had not been defeated by enemies. It had been defeated by mercy, and the humans had chosen to save him anyway. The emperor's survival did not restore the empire. It changed it forever. News of the failed coup spread across the galaxy within hours. Soldiers learned the humans had stood unarmed before weapons meant for them. Citizens heard that the emperor had been saved by those he once called weak. The old laws, built on fear, began to lose meaning. Fleets stopped waiting for orders. Many commanders declared their sectors neutral, refusing to fight for any throne. The emperor recovered slowly, his body weak but his mind clear for the first time in centuries. He asked for Captain Elias Cain again. This time, the meeting was not secret. It was broadcast across the empire. Advisors begged him to cancel it. He refused. The emperor appeared without armor, sitting instead of standing. Cain stood freely beside him. The emperor spoke to his people. He admitted the empire had been built on cruelty. He admitted fear had destroyed loyalty. His voice shook as he said the truth. Humans had shown him another path. Then Cain was asked to speak. He did not accuse. He did not demand justice. He said humans believed strength was protecting life, not ruling it. He said mercy did not erase the past, but it could shape the future. Across ships and worlds, silence followed. Soldiers removed helmets. Citizens wept. Other alien races, long conquered by the Zarketh, watched the broadcast with disbelief. Rebellion stopped, not because of fear, but because hope replaced it. The emperor announced the end of forced rule. Conquered worlds would be free to choose their future. The High Council protested, but their voices were weak. Power had already slipped away. Many generals resigned. Others fled. The empire, once vast, was shrinking peacefully. In the streets of the capital, statues of past tyrants were taken down, not in rage, but in reflection. The emperor ordered all humans released. When the gates opened, soldiers did not aim weapons. They bowed their heads. Captain Cain led his people out, not as victors, but as witnesses. He knew this moment mattered more than any battle. Across the galaxy, new alliances formed. Races once enemies spoke for the first time. Trade replaced conquest. The Zarketh Empire still existed in name, but its heart was gone. The emperor stepped down from the throne days later. He removed the crown himself and placed it on the ground. He said he would spend the rest of his life repairing what he had broken. As he walked away, the galaxy remembered one truth. Humans had not conquered an empire. They had changed it. And mercy, once mocked, had become the strongest force the stars had ever known. The fall of the Zarketh Empire continued quietly but unstoppable. Without the emperor's command and with generals either fleeing or resigning, entire fleets drifted in space, unsure who to obey. On worlds that had once trembled at the mention of Zarketh rule, citizens walked freely for the first time in centuries. Soldiers who had followed orders, without question, now questioned everything. Even minor commands were met with hesitation, and hesitation bred doubt. Captain Elias Cain and his people moved among the liberated worlds, not to claim power, but to help. They provided food, medicine, and guidance to populations left without leaders. Where humans went, peace followed. Yet not everyone welcomed the change. Some Zarkef loyalists attempted uprisings, hoping to restore the old ways of fear and obedience. Their attempts failed easily, not because humans fought them, but because their own soldiers refused to obey. The Empire had lost its control from within. On distant planets, former allies of the Zarkef began to rise. They declared independence, forming councils and self-governing systems. Humans did not interfere. They only offered counsel when asked. In the imperial capital, the emperor watched the events unfold. He was no longer a ruler with absolute power. He was a witness. He saw ships returning to planets that had once been conquered, carrying supplies, people, and hope instead of weapons. The Zarkef Empire had not fallen through war. It had fallen through the realization that fear could no longer bind hearts. Captain Kane convened a meeting with surviving Zarkef generals who had not fled. He spoke to them calmly, explaining that humanity did not seek domination. The generals listened, many with tears in their eyes. They had lived their lives believing strength came from crushing others, only to discover that mercy held more power than fear ever had. Across the galaxy, transmissions showed humans acting in every corner, preventing conflicts, offering aid, and resolving disputes peacefully. Soldiers who had once fired on civilians now lowered their weapons without question. Citizens followed their example. In every sector, the Empire was unraveling, not through conquest, but through transformation. The Emperor realized the truth. He had feared humans because they were different, because they acted from compassion rather than domination. That difference had broken the Empire without a single full-scale battle. And as Captain Kane watched the stars from a liberated world, he understood something else. Humans had not only survived the Empire, they had created a galaxy where fear no longer ruled, a galaxy that would never forget the strength of mercy. The end of the Zarkef Empire came not with a grand battle, but with silence. Across the galaxy, ships lay idle, soldiers refused orders, and once-feared commanders surrendered without resistance. Worlds that had been burned and conquered for centuries now governed themselves. Markets reopened, families reunited, and the first celebrations in generations filled the streets. Captain Elias Kane and his people moved quietly among the liberated systems. They offered guidance, shared resources, and helped rebuild what had been destroyed, not as rulers, but as helpers. Wherever humans went, hope spread. The Emperor, once feared and untouchable, now walked among his people as a man. He was humbled, broken, yet alive. His crown, a symbol of tyranny, had been removed. He offered apologies, not only to his own citizens, but to every conquered world. The former generals, stripped of power, followed the Emperor's orders with a new understanding. They no longer sought to rule through fear, but to serve. Across the Empire, communication lines carried one truth. Humans had not destroyed the Zarkef Empire through war, but through something stronger: mercy. In former battlefields, humans worked alongside aliens to clear debris, rebuild shelters, and comfort survivors. Their acts of compassion inspired the entire galaxy. Former enemies, who had once lived in fear, now extended hands in friendship. Captain Kane never took credit for the change. He said humans only did what was right, and that simple truth resonated far more than weapons ever could. The Emperor called a final assembly in the central palace. He addressed the remaining leaders and citizens, acknowledging the role humans had played in the survival of countless lives. He spoke of a new law, one built on choice, mercy, and respect. Across the galaxy, the message was heard and celebrated. For the first time in millennia, the stars were quiet, not with fear, but with peace. As Kane looked at the horizon from the Capitol balcony, he understood the legacy they had created. The Empire was gone, but the galaxy had been given a new beginning. And in that moment, everyone realized one truth. Humans had not conquered by force. They had conquered through compassion, and that victory would last forever. Years passed, and the galaxy began to heal. The Zarkef Empire, once feared across countless star systems, was now a memory, a warning of what cruelty could build and what mercy could destroy. Worlds that had lived in oppression now thrived with freedom. Trade routes reopened, Planets rebuilt their cities, and children played where armies had once marched. Humans traveled among these worlds, not as conquerors, but as witnesses and helpers. Captain Elias Kane, older now, walked quietly among the people he had helped. He never sought glory. He only wanted to ensure that mercy and compassion continued to guide civilizations. The Emperor, once a tyrant, now spent his days aiding in reconstruction. He had learned the hardest lesson of all. Power without compassion is fragile, but compassion can change hearts and entire empires. Across the galaxy, leaders of former empires and depressed planets met together for the first time. They discussed peace, trade, and alliances. Humans were always present, teaching that true strength came not from weapons, but from protecting life and choosing kindness even when it was hardest. Stories of human acts spread faster than fleets ever could. A human who saved a soldier on one planet inspired humans and aliens across a dozen systems. A child given hope by a human teacher grew up to lead their own world peacefully. Everywhere humans went, their example created ripple effects. The galaxy learned that mercy was not weakness. It was power beyond comprehension. Captain Kane often stood beneath the stars, reflecting on all that had happened. He knew the road had been long, that countless lives had been at risk, yet every choice to act with compassion had shaped a better future. One final transmission from the Emperor echoed across space. They did not win by power. They won by being human. And so, the legacy of humanity was written into the stars. Empires could rise and fall, but the strength of mercy, courage, and compassion endured forever. The galaxy, once ruled by fear, now had a new guiding light, and that light came from humanity.